Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 116 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're going to talk about fundamentals, training, and application. So we had a great phone call from a longtime customer who has not attended our long range shooting school and who is trying to compete right now. And I think this is a great segment to lead into our 4 pillars of marksmanship and just talk about, why the shooting school applied and the errors that they're making that cause a lot of frustration and end up costing us shooters that are going out and competing and enjoying the art of long range shooting. One of the reasons why we started the shooting school. So without further ado, here we go. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to Krieger Barrels. Krieger is a proud sponsor of the show and maker of fine cut rifle barrels. They have a new program called Krieger Direct where you can log on and purchase your barrel and have it in as little as 2 to 3 days. So if you need a barrel and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. That's KriegerDirect.com. Also, we'd like to thank MDT. MDT is also a proud sponsor of this show and maker of world-class chassis. They have everything from their new ACC chassis right down to the HNT26, making world-class hunting rifles. So if you need a custom stock for your custom rifle or factory, stop over to MDT TAC. That's MDTTAC.com. All right, so to get into this podcast here and to give you a little backstory, I had a phone call from a customer named Russ, and Russ was talking about him getting into competitive shooting and just how frustrating it is. He's the typical guy that's getting into long-range shooting. He's a business owner. He's very much a hard-working, go-getter type personality and type person, right? And that's a great thing to have in our industry. But that also comes with a double-edged sword, and we've talked about this in other podcasts where the personalities play out because we want to master and we want to be able to do great at all of these things. But there are lots of things that get into the way. So I was talking to Russ yesterday. We had built Russ a 6.5x47. He's on his second barrel now. We also built one of his teammates a rifle. Now, we really appreciate the business, but they've never attended the shooting school. Of course, they're working really hard. They're barely getting enough time with young families to go out and shoot and compete. And, we were talking a little bit yesterday, and he was telling me, how frustrating it is that, Jamie said, I can shoot awesome prone. I don't get it. But when I have to shoot off of barricades or off these other non-traditional type situations, my hit rates are at 50%. I'm happy. He said, I'm leaving the range and I'm leaving the matches upset. My one friend asked me if I was going to quit shooting altogether because he was knowing that I was having all these issues and leaving the line upset. And then Russ continued to tell me even more. He said, I don't get it. I don't understand why I can't get any better at this. And it's so frustrating. And I sort of sat back on my heels a little bit with this one because those words and everything that he's saying is really why we started our long-range shooting school in the first place. So we used to go to lots of matches, 15, 20 years ago, traditional sniper matches. And back then, they weren't like PRS, and there wasn't a lot of good training available anywhere. And so if you didn't get trained or have some professional guidance or a mentor, if you went to these matches, there was a lot of things you didn't know. Even though you might be a great shooter prone with a bipod, you are going to get your butt handed to you. And I always say if you want to destroy somebody's ego, especially men, tell them they can't drive or they can't shoot, right? And so over the years, especially when I was a younger shooter, it was really frustrating to watch new shooters come to a match. And, they're great guys, fun to hang out with. They got good rifles, everything's squared away. And yet over the course of a 2 or 3 day match, by day 1 or day 2, they would leave and not come back. So it wasn't uncommon to have like a 2-day match, let's just say a Saturday or Sunday, and have 2 guys show up that want to attend the match, and they do so poorly the first day. Even though people are trying to help them, it's an active match, and everybody's trying to give them guidance and pointers, but let's just face it, when you're in that mindset and things aren't going well, you're not really open to hearing things, and you're not, the frustration's already set in. But it wasn't uncommon for us to come back on day 2 of the match and people not return. And I always thought it was such a shame, that this industry already struggles to keep and maintain people shooting. And it's such a passion of mine. I love this stuff. That's what started the shooting school. And I said to Russ, I said, oh my God, haven't you ever considered taking a class? I mean, not just coming up and taking our long-range shooting school, but taking a class. And I proceeded to tell him the story of the start of the long-range shooting school here was that I had been talking to my teammate. His name was Richard Jones. And I said to Richard, I said, hey, I really think we should consider offering like a 1 or 2 day class. And prior to this, I was helping guys get on some different teams. I was helping guys really get the fundamentals dialed in for wanting to get on different departments. And this was private, but still, I was doing training and I was helping and I was competing and doing well. I shot for Hornady and Louisville back in those days, and so they had helped me as sponsors, and that was awesome, right? And winning and placing in matches, but I always looked around at the new shooters, and I could see them leaving, and it's like my heart just broke. Like I want to reach out to them and say, look, it's not as bad as you think. There's just a couple of things you don't know. And if you get these things sorted out, you're going to have a great time. And I always thought it was sad that we were losing these new shooters because, let's just face it, they just got their butts handed to them. They're leaving the range looking like a terrible shooter amongst their peers. These are people that are world-class shooters, and they just don't come back. So I told Richard at this match, I remember the match specifically, and by the way, Richard now works for us. Richard had retired from his previous job, and here we are 2 decades later, and he's part of our team here at Wolf Precision, so I'm really looking forward to having him. If you call in and you talk to him, you'll know who it is if it's Richard, because he's still got that British accent. He was in the British military and such, so looking forward. I might bring him on the podcast here very shortly and introduce him officially and talk with him a little about his shooting and his background, but anyway, so I said to Richard, about trying to start this 1 or 2 day or 3 day fundamentals class, and lo and behold, it was a team sniper match. These 2 guys showed up. They were on our relay. We had 30 people on our relay. They were great guys. We enjoyed the daylights out of their company. They had good equipment. They were funny. But when the match started, by the end of the day, it completely destroyed them as shooters. I mean, I could see in their eyes, even though everybody's trying to help them and guide them through the match, I could see in their eyes that they might not come back. And lo and behold, on Sunday morning, when they're doing roll call and getting everybody squatted up and ready to continue on with the match, they weren't there. And I thought, well, that's the last time we should lose shooters like this. So I sat down that entire winter and I wrote the book that we now use at the Long Range Shooting School. Now, it's been modified and changed and updated. I mean, the school's been going on for close to 15 years now, and it's obviously a new modern version of it. But the core of what really makes this class work and why it's so valuable to new shooters is getting those fundamentals down. And so let's go back and talk about Russ here a minute. And hopefully Russ is listening to the podcast and getting a big giggle out of this. But after Russ had spilt all that to me, and by the way, what he was saying has been repeated to me over and over again through the years as far as new shooters go, and just watching them suffer the consequences of, there are just things they don't know. So there are things you know, things you don't know, and things you don't know you don't know. And the School of Hard Knocks is a tough one to go through if you're trying to get this down. And so getting the fundamentals down, and this is going to lead into our 4 pillars of marksmanship, and we're going to talk about fundamentals here on the podcast over the next several episodes. So if you're really into shooting and you would like some really good pointers and tips, really this is a great place in the next several podcasts to really catch on and hopefully get some good information out of it. That said, by the way, let me throw this out there. You can support the podcast if you would like through Patreon. You can stop over to our podcast page on our website. And for $3 a month or $36 a year, if you'd like to support the podcast, we certainly do appreciate that. You can look us up on Patreon. It's Wolf Precision, and you can register and sign up there if you would like to support the show. We certainly appreciate that. So now that we did the shameless plug, let's get on to talking about the fundamentals, right? So here's the problem that Russ was having. He is a good shooter prone. He's pretty squared away shooting prone. He thinks he can run the rifle pretty good. It's when he gets on all of the other positions that everything falls apart. So think about like a tank trap or a barricade or a window seal or, shooting off a backpack or a tripod or something raised up off the ground, anything other than prone, and all of a sudden he just completely falls apart. And here's my rule with this, and here's how I'm going to approach it even over the next several podcasts. You have to master the art of fundamentals prone. This is my opinion. You have to understand the intimate relationship with a rifle and how you and it are supposed to work together, right? You almost need to make it an extension of your body. You have to have these set of rules or things that you're going to go over from front to back, inside and out, on how you're going to interact with the rifle, how you are going to consistently maintain different types of holds and pressures. Then once you master that, those fundamentals are applied to any and every other position. It's just less than ideal or less than perfectly stable like prone is. But you have to learn the rules. You have to learn the rules prone because you can't master them in any other position. So when people talk about, training off of barricades and training off of windowsills and training off of any type of untraditional type shooting, the problem they run into, it isn't that they have to train the position. They have to learn how to apply the fundamentals to that position. You can't really train off of barricades if you don't know the rules that have to apply. You have to train the fundamentals off of that. And so you have to learn and master the fundamentals in one area and then start applying them to the other areas that you're working in. So where Russ was making the mistake is he was trying to learn all these positions, but he doesn't have the foundation down yet. And that's where the biggest problem lies. So I've got a chance to shoot a lot. And a lot of my shooting when I was younger was non-traditional type shooting, especially with varmint hunting and groundhog hunting and all the little critters and stuff, even when I was a very young teenager. Learning how to manipulate the rifle and all these other positions, right? But you have to have the foundation to lay it on. If you have that foundation, then you're applying the same set of rules, but in a less than ideal or perfect condition. So when you get to matches, so for example, like one of the gentlemen that I really look up to, he's sort of a mentor of mine. His name is John Markwell. I've known John for going on a couple decades now, and he's just a great guy and a great shooter, right? But one time, I actually won the Allegheny Sniper Challenge with a prototype rifle back in 2012. It was one of my proudest moments. I really didn't think I won the match, to be honest with you. I thought I did well, and me and the rifle were running well, and it was a 3-day sniper match, and went down to congratulate the winner, and John walked up to me with the trophy and was like, "Congratulations, dude, you won." I was like, "You're kidding me." He goes, "No." He said, "You did great." And I said to him afterwards, because we're friends, and I said, I had a couple of stages where I just, didn't do so well. And he said, "You know what? To win matches like this, especially field matches, it's not the best at any position that will win this match." So if you take a world-class prone shooter or a world-class bench rest shooter, they're going to kick ass and get points in the area that they're experts in, or a world-class sling shooter, someone who's just incredibly skilled at shooting sling. Those people will never win the match, though. It's the person that's well-rounded and can do good at everything, not great, but do good at everything that will win this match every single time. So a solid shooter that's fundamentally sound across the broad board or the broad range of positions and scenarios will always come out on top, rather than the guy that's an expert at this one area and this one area just dominating it, but as soon as he gets to the other positions, he falls way behind. He just doesn't have that skill set. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense for so many different reasons. And I always practiced what I was weak at. So I always focused on fundamentals. So training was always fundamentals, and that's practice and trained prone. But then it was applied to the other positions. So, for example, there was a stage called Sergeant York off the Rock where he had to engage 5 targets furthest to the closest in 21 seconds with a reload. It was a crazy stage. And you had to be fundamentally sound. You had to know your rifle, know your dope, and timing was everything. And I remember practicing that stage because the first time I shot it, I went all blazing saddles. I did not do well at all. And so I went back home. I sat up with a simulated version of it as best as I could, and I was practicing it. But the whole time I'm applying the fundamentals of marksmanship now. I'm thinking, okay, I've got this less than ideal position, but I still have these rules that apply in order for me to hit the target. Because when I came off of that stage, John had said to me, that's John Markwell of the Allegheny Sniper Challenge, said one of the things that stuck with me the rest of my life. And I didn't know John very well at all. He looked at me and said, "You cannot miss fast enough to win a match." And I got off the stage, the next guy come up, and that stuck with me. Oh my God, yeah, you got all the rounds off, but you didn't hit everything. And so there's so many things you learn over the years through course of peers helping and giving you some advice, which in that case, John gave me some awesome advice and just stuck with me. But the fundamentals apply. So when I would be practicing and talking about this podcast here, when I would be practicing these less than ideal positions, I would be focusing on applying the fundamentals to the obstacle rather than trying to learn to shoot off an obstacle. one of the dangers, I think, with PRS, and I'm probably going to get in trouble with PRS for this, but PRS is very well gear driven. So if you're going to compete and you're going to win PRS, you're going to use a lot of this gear. So think carbon fiber tripods. And now I see where they're using a tripod up front and another tripod to support the rear of the rifle. So just like musicians, it's gear fest. They're anything shiny with a good story or an application that's going to get you a point and you're going to buy it. However, though, one of the dangers in learning to use all this equipment is that you learn to depend on it, or you feel that you have to use it to make that shot. So you learn to use the equipment to make that shot, but you think the secret's the equipment. And so I feel that sometimes in these types of matches, although I understand the necessity of the tools that you're using, I mean, let's face it, the person who misses first loses the match. They're so tight in the competition, right? But I feel for new shooters, one of the things it really takes away from is they don't have to master the art of fundamentals because they have equipment that will actually buffer them from the errors that they're making, if that makes any sense. So I think a lot of the older field sniper matches had more value to them as far as fundamentals. So think of a sling, a bipod, and the rear bag in your backpack, and you're using just your average gear that you really would take on a hunting trip, that you really would use in the field to really learn to master all of these positions. So, for example, on one of the stages that we shot off, I'm sure these are all over the place, but he shot off a round fence post. And it was, of course, old school cut, crooked, all whoopy and wobbly. But you had to shoot this target at like 600 yards off a fence post. Well, years later, when we were shooting a very similar event, a guy got out this game changer bag that weighed like 15, 20 pounds, and sat it on the fence post, which made it like 6 inches wide and 1 foot long. And he laid the rifle on this giant bag and shot. And I always thought that was funny. I said, I get it that he carried that heavy bag around and he's going to probably shoot a little bit better at that stage. But I sort of thought the point of shooting off the fence post was to learn to shoot off a fence post, not to turn it into a bench rest bench to shoot off of. And so the reason I bring this up is be careful as new shooters that you master the art of fundamentals. That just remember, although you're not going to shoot the stage quite as well without the equipment, of course you're not. This equipment is super stable, and it just really elevates your ability to keep those shots in there, right? But it shortchanges you because it buffers you from the fundamentals that make those shots happen. So if you take practice and you practice your fundamentals of marksmanship a lot more sensitive, I mean, your attention to detail has to be a lot higher. Your sensitivity to the rifle and your cheek weld and pressure and pulling and all the places that you're touching, this is really critical. But I will tell you that you can learn to take those shots without any of that equipment and master the rifle. Then when you have the equipment available, it just makes it that much easier. But in your mind, you don't need it to make that shot. And for me, that's the most important thing is, you might not hit quite as small as a group, and you might have a higher percentage of a chance of a miss, but you're not equipment dependent. You are a skilled rifleman. You're a shooter. You understand the fundamentals of marksmanship. And in all other less than perfect, less than ideal situations, you can come up with something to make a stable position to make a shot. That's really what it's all about. So when you're working with this and you're getting ready to go out and shoot matches, it was amazing that Russ lit a fire in me a little bit yesterday because it was why we started the shooting school. And it's amazing that story of guys getting frustrated and almost getting ready to hang up the sport because they're doing so poorly, when all they have to do is get into a good fundamentals class, understand the art of what they're supposed to do, then apply that skill set to these positions, and it will change their world forever. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I told him, I said, look, if you can make it, we don't have any slots open this year. I think we have one slot open next week, and we had a cancellation. But other than that, we're full for 2022. And we are a custom rifle building company, and we're growing our business. And so I can only hold so many schools. But I did recommend it. Hey, stop over and get onto our online long-range shooting school. I mean, that's why it's there. We have lots of customers, especially when we started looking at COVID and how it's making everything more difficult to travel, more expensive to travel, airfare, hotels, rental cars, for crying out loud, that we want to be able to share this information to just about anyone anywhere here in the United States that's a U.S. citizen. And they can go on and actually attend the school, the actual entire long-range shooting school online. And so for us, if you can't make it to the school, which I think next year him and his friend are going to come to the long-range shooting school. And I always say there's a difference between learning to fly an airplane online and crawling into a cockpit of an airplane and taking off, right? So I never thought, or I never think that the online long-range shooting school is going to replace the actual hands-on experience here. What it is, it's a chance for us to reach out and help everybody remotely that in Russ's case might not be able to make it here till next year. And that's why we started the school. And I was just encouraging them, look, here's the thing. You have to master your fundamentals and then apply the fundamentals to those positions. You don't master the position just by shooting it. You have to understand the rules of the game. And I think that helps in so many ways, especially for new shooters. So the fundamentals of marksmanship in my mind is learned prone. And then once we master what the rules to the game are, then we apply that to all the other different obstacles and barricades and things that we're going to shoot from. Hunting trips, shooting off a backpack, a rock, the nook of a tree, all of these things. This is what we're trying to do. Before we continue on with the podcast, I do want to say a quick thanks to one more sponsor. I want to thank Trigger Tech. Trigger Tech is the maker of world-class triggers, and that is all we put in our custom rifles here. They make a single-stage, a two-stage, self-cleaning, and user-adjustable with one screw, so you can adjust the trigger pull weight to get the pull weight exactly where you want it to be, and you can do it on your own. You don't have to send it in or play with 3 different screws and make an unsafe situation with your trigger, and they're self-cleaning. So if you want a great trigger for your rifle, custom or otherwise, you can stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com. We'd also like to thank Wolf Precision's online long-range shooting school. That helps with the podcast here. So if you're interested in taking a world-class long-range shooting school from the convenience of your own home, you can stop over to wolfprecision.net, fill out the applications, register online, and enjoy the classes. We will have all the classes up by the end of the year, and so you can attend the entire course from the convenience of your own home. So we're going to get into the fundamentals of marksmanship, and I call it the 4 pillars of marksmanship. That's going to continue on in the next podcast. The big thing with this is just try to get your mindset around what the foundation is going to be. So Russ, this is for you. If you're really interested in trying to master it, and of course we would recommend that you come over. If you can't take the school here, at least get online and start learning the art of what we do and take some classes, or take classes anywhere. I always recommend, people are unique in the fact that you can go to 7 different schools and you're going to learn something at every class. They are experts, or they have just this little bit of an edge on something that they're just great at, and you'll absorb that from them. So any class is better than no class. Get to a class. But the next several episodes are going to be trying to address this and share with you as much as we can in an audio format here, to get you as much great information as we can, to get you the most out of your shooting that we can, so you can go out and actually enjoy yourself at a match. When you leave, be smiling and say, yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a lot of fun. I can't wait to go back and do it again. So stay tuned for the next podcast. They'll be posted up soon, and there'll be an entire series coming up on the fundamentals. To give you some quick updates here, our 2023 long-range shooting school dates are posted and live. We usually try to post those a year out, and that way it gives time for people to make their plans, arrangements, travel, everything else, vacation time off work. So if you would like to register for our long-range shooting school here in Somerset, PA, our dates are up for 2023. Looking forward to having you. Of course, there are limited slots for each class. We'd also like to say we have 1 slot that just opened up for our class next weekend. So if you would like to attend our class this year, we do have 1 slot that just opened. Love to have you. The other thing I would like to say real quick is, if you enjoy the podcast, if you don't mind leaving us a review, we really do appreciate it. It helps us a lot on the different platforms of being found. If you know people that like to shoot and you enjoy the show, if you don't mind sharing it with them, that also helps a lot. We certainly appreciate that as well. And then as we keep moving on through the fundamental series, we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please send us the questions at contact@wolfprecision.net, and in the subject line, put fundamentals question. And if we read your question on the air, we are going to send you a t-shirt or hat as our way of saying thanks. So at the end of the entire series here, which is going to be about 4 or 5 episodes, we're going to do a customer Q&A session, maybe invite Richard on to talk a little bit about it as well. And if we read your question on the air, we will send you a t-shirt or hat as our way of saying thank you. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the next podcast. The next series is going to be a great one. This is for you, Russ. This is all about the fundamentals of marksmanship and mastering the art of shooting a rifle. Till next time, my name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast. Thank you.